Right, so we're going to talk about what we call a hip hinge. So what that means is I'm going to be, essentially think of like a door hinge. I'm going to be hinging at my hips versus my knees just doing all the work. So what happens oftentimes, I see people doing this, is that they almost kind of go here and do this like sort of squat thing and try to like almost use their knees to help them. So for this, I find kind of having as many little extra tools in our belt to help kind of reduce that. So we really want to have the visual of when we do this hip hinge, I want my neck, my spine, and my pelvis to all move as one unit. So I should be coming together as one unit. I can still bend my knees, but the difference is when I'm bending my knees don't continue to bend as I do this movement. It's really going to be driving through my hips. So as easy as that might seem, it's actually quite hard. So a lot of people have it really ingrained in them to squat, to do things. Bend with your knees, grab things with your knees is what we're kind of constantly told, which is not a bad thing, but a lot of times in life, you actually need to use your hips and rise out. So you actually use more of your hips and your glutes versus your low back. So if I'm just grabbing something, like I'll just pretend to grab this. If I'm here and I'm driving with my back and then my hips are following, that's going to put a lot more stress on my lower back versus if I'm here driving my hips back, my low back is coming for the ride, but it's not initiating the movement. I will say I am notoriously a little bit stiffer in through my joints. So for me, this motion makes a lot more sense for my body, but some people have a lot more flexibility through all their joints, which is really actually, desirable for a lot of people. We all want to be flexible, but it actually puts a lot more work mentally and kind of physically, because now you have to think, how do I isolate a joint when all my joints move really, really well? So a couple little drills I have is one, the broomstick, and trying to focus on using your hips. Try to keep your toes down throughout this movement and coming back, still bending through the knees. The other motion I find helpful is you're going to think of having, I'm just going to come this way actually. You're going to think of having your thumbs on the top of your ribs, pinkies by your hip bone, and then you're going to think of trying to push a car door closed. So you're pushing towards the wall. I'm kind of too far. There we go. So I'm going to be pushing towards that wall and then rising out. And this space is staying the same the whole time. So if I start to kind of use my back, then the space will shrink between my hands. Or if I kind of overarch and I start going like this, it'll separate that space. So I really want the space to stay uniform throughout the entire motion. So I'm shoving my bum back, tapping through here, and rising out. I would say if you have the tendency of using your knees more or have recurrent low back pain, this is a really good drill to try. I would do 8 to 10 repetitions. If you're feeling it more in your low back or your knees, you probably might need someone to watch and be a little more mindful of these tips of like thinking along the broomstick around your back. So keeping everything as one movement, and just someone else to kind of cue you or like touch kind of sides of your hips or something just to give you a little more feedback. It's kind of hard to just move without any feedback because your body will be like, there's a lot of open space, so it's kind of confusing for your body to know where you're moving and how to isolate it if it's not a familiar movement. But it really can be helpful for low back pain, especially if you have like recurrent back pain or you want to get into deadlifting. That's going to be a really important motion to really power through the hips and get that range. So give that a shot, see how it goes.